The landscape base plan is literally the foundation that the entire design team, from landscape designers to landscape architects, use. So the map provides what is here now today. And then we can apply our design process on top of that so we understand the implications of our design. If we're going to be building into an area that has a change in topography, we know we're automatically going to need a wall or some pretty serious grading to be able to taper that back. Those both have powerful aesthetic and potentially cost impacts that we would know right away. So the map helps not only with the art of landscape design and landscape architecture, there's a real practical element in terms of not designing something working against the land or working against your client's budget. So all of the data that's provided is incredibly critical. And it all really comes down to brass tacks by the time you're ready to build. And this map is the basis for that. If you're doing conceptual design projects and you're not working down into actual details that you're going to build from, you can probably get away with a lot less accuracy than Foresite provides. But if you're actually intending to design a landscape that's going to be built and you don't have an accurate base map, you're really just designing a fantasy. We can absolutely break your mapping process up into sections based on budget or availability. It's usually about budget. So the drawback in phasing a project is the additional costs or the redundant costs in mobilizing, meaning the time it takes for us to get there and the time it takes for us to set up our equipment. Other than that, there's no real drawback as long as you've gotten the necessary data for your design team. That's a really good question. In some cases, a licensed surveyor is the right choice for a map. If you have to have legal property boundaries marked, then that's a service we cannot provide legally. But as for base maps for landscape design, we focus on the specific needs required by landscape architects and landscape designers in the landscape design process, meaning that we're paying closer attention to thresholds, windows and doors, downspouts, overhangs, in addition to the common practice of topography and major elements that a surveyor might. Also, we format our maps for the specific needs of the end user. So depending on the CAD program and the type of designer that the person is, we have some customization to make their experience of the map much easier and much more efficient. From the project management perspective, it's our map. It's the very document that we're turning to for every decision. We're looking at meeting a landscape design on a piece of paper to the actual ground that we're building it in. Right? So if there's a retaining wall, we're looking at the cuts from that map to understand exactly what we have to do in terms of the installation process for the wall, let's say. And so it's an irreplaceable document. Otherwise, we're just guessing all the way through. And in complex landscapes, and even in simple landscapes, those are risky propositions to be guessing. So it's the fundamental document that everything is built upon that we're all referring back to in order to make this landscape a reality. We use the base maps early on in pre-construction as much as we use them during the construction process. So whether it is a finished plan that's passed on to a contractor or whether our own internal project management teams are measuring ourselves, we actually go in and we measure the square footage of certain areas or linear footage of certain areas. So this helps us from the PM side manage bids so we can kind of understand what square foot prices are coming in, or if it's a project that we're building ourselves, we're actually managing material flow. So tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of material are being purchased and shipped to sites, some of which are non-refundable. So we really depend on the accuracy of these early maps when putting our material list together. Our maps are shot with survey grade equipment and meet the highest tolerances. So if our design is based on a base map that has massive inaccuracies, and sometimes even minor inaccuracies depending on the portion of the project, that is directly going to affect your project schedule, and it will absolutely affect your project budget. If we have topography that's inaccurately mapped, and we have contractors basing excavation or wall heights or any other component associated with that particular part of the landscape, those numbers aren't going to be accurate. And when we get to site and we realize we had 20 yards to move instead of 2 yards to move, or 200 yards to move instead of 20, then we know that that's going to cost a lot more money. And so the base map early on for your design professionals to work from, and the accuracy of that base map rather, is absolutely fundamental and relates to the project that is to take place months or even years down the road.